Welcome to Twilight Render's Getting Started video tutorial series. This is basic camera animation with SketchUp and Twilight Render. What we have here is a basic cube with numbers on it for easy orientation as we move the camera around. Now we have placed several scenes flying around in a circle around the cube to simulate a turntable animation. Of course, the first thing we want to do when working with animations in SketchUp is to go to the Window pull-down menu and check Model Info, Animation Settings. By setting the scene transition in seconds, this is how you determine the length of your animation. Now we will go to the Extensions or Plugins pull-down menu, Twilight Render V2, and choose Animation Editor. Twilight will produce your animation as a series of sequentially numbered images, which you will need to open in an external video editor in order to set the frame rate, add background music, etc. Unless of course you are using Twilight Render V2 Pro, then you will see this handy tools menu here, which we will cover later on in this video. Let's begin by rendering a preliminary animation. For our render preset, let's choose Render Settings, Express, Easy, and O1 Prelim or O2 Low. Lower render settings with preliminary renderings equals a more efficient workflow. Now we will open the Advanced Animation Render Settings pull-down menu. The default animation path type will be SketchUp Scenes. Here we will notice that the default start time, end time, and frame rate are set to 0. Let's choose 15 frames per second for our preliminary frame rate. Earlier we have set the number of seconds for our scene transitions. Since we have 9 scenes, that means we have 8 transitions. 8 transitions multiplied by 1 second per transition equals 8 seconds. Now we will choose Base Image Name and determine the location, file type, and name upon which our sequence of images names will be based. Now if we zoom out, we can choose Show the Expected Animation Path. The camera path will be represented as lines, with each scene being an endpoint for each line, and the transitional cameras placed as dots along that line. Now we can try different types of animation paths. By choosing Smooth SU Scenes, a small curve will be added at each major transition point to help smooth out the animation. The path can be updated by clicking on the Show the Expected Animation Path button. Here we can see the result. Now let's choose Smooth Curves. This will attempt to use the SketchUp scenes as control points for a Bezier spline curve, resulting in a very smooth animation. This will completely eliminate the bouncy SketchUp scenes we normally see in SketchUp animations, with the exception of the beginning and end points. Now we have completed our animation settings, we can preview the animation path by choosing Move Camera Along Animation Path, and this will allow us to make sure that our settings are exactly what we want before wasting any render time. Attempting to preview the animation path while the sun is turned on can drastically slow down this preview. Therefore, it's recommended to turn off the sun in your SketchUp scenes. Now we can go to Model Info and change the number of seconds for our scene transitions in order to lengthen or shorten our animation. So if we change this now to 2, we need to go and change the end time to match. We will now set this to 16 because 2 seconds times 8 scene transitions equals 16 seconds. Returning to Model Info, under the Animation Scene Transitions, we can return it back to 1, but we need to remember to set the end time back to 8 seconds. Your frame rate for prelims should be 15. Be sure you choose Reuse Lighting Information. This is when you set content to camera only, along with the usage of the 01 through 07 render settings. Reusing lighting information saves the rendering cache and reuses it for each image, so that it does not have to recalculate the light for each frame. If you are rendering camera and lights, or you're rendering all, such as if you're rendering objects moving, then you will not be able to reuse lighting information. Typically for architectural renderings, you will be choosing camera only for your content, and then you will be able to reuse the lighting information. If you do want to render an animation with objects moving, then you must uncheck the Reuse Lighting Information box. Then you will want to choose a render setting that is optimized for object animation, which are here under the Animation Render Settings. These render settings will work more quickly and eliminate light flicker in your object animations. Today we are going to render just the camera, so we're going to reuse the lighting information. Be sure that your content is set to camera only and hit the play button. We're going to overwrite the existing files that we had, and now it will quickly process the geometry and start rendering the scene. Here we can see we're at 20 frames out of 121 frames total. We can see that each frame is taking approximately 2 seconds to render. So now we can calculate that with the 121 images that we need for the full animation, multiply that by 2 seconds to get to 242 seconds for an approximate render time for the animation. Keep in mind that as the scene complexity increases, so will your render times. If render times are critical for you, be sure to optimize everything you can in your scene. Things to avoid while rendering your animation. Light emitting surfaces. Set your light emitting surfaces to be fake. Also avoid complex reflective surfaces such as blurry metals or plastics, translucent materials, and subsurface scattering materials. Now we can see that the render time for the full animation was 4 minutes and 10 seconds. If you are rendering with Twilight Render V2 Pro, you will have this tool's pull-down menu. Now you can choose to turn your animation into an animated GIF. This allows you to choose that first frame in your animation and click Open. Then choose Yes to continue exporting your animation as a GIF. Now you will be able to easily share that GIF animation on the web. Keep in mind that the GIF animation will be of lower quality than the original animation. This is due to the compression format required for GIF animations. Now let's explore the Tools menu once more and find the FFMpeg export option. FFmpeg is a powerful and popular free encoding tool for video. All you need to do is see the description of our video here and download the tool to your hard drive. Then you point Twilight Render to the location of the exe file. Now Twilight Render can harness the power of FFmpeg Video Encoder to piece your sequence of images together into a high-quality, low file size video ready to share. After choosing FFmpeg, select the first image in the sequence and choose Open. The first time using the FFmpeg tool, you will have to define the location for the FFmpeg exe file on your computer. The default format for FFmpeg will be MP4, and the default quality will be high. Choose OK, and it will create the video in the same folder where the sequence of images was placed. The video will be encoded with the same frames per second that are set in the animation settings for Twilight Render. If you wish to render at 15 frames per second, but prefer the encoder to run at 24 frames per second, you can change that in the render settings before running FFmpeg encoder. If you have any further questions on animating cameras in Twilight and SketchUp, please feel free to visit us on our forum at twilightrender.com. Be sure to hit like and subscribe for more videos from Twilight Render.